Hello, 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 and welcome to Workforce Wednesday here at WLF Live. I am your host, Erica M. Roberts, and I am so excited to join you today as we have an esteemed guest who has made inroads and advances for women in both her career and in business. And I'm so excited to welcome Valerie Jackson for her first visit here in Forward Women's Leadership Forum and specifically WLF Live. Again, I am Erica Roberts, and I get to host this fabulous live show every Wednesday, first Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook and YouTube. And if you would ever like to watch us live, feel free to join us. Just follow at Forward WLF to not only tune in on the first Wednesday, but Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the month to be joined by the team, the village that is the WLF Live team. This is part of a broader vision from founder Colette Coakley, who is the founder and the creator of Forward Women's Leadership Forum, as well as the vice president of human resources at Maryland Public Television. And the vision is really to provide a resource and build a village for women to be able to grow and to advance and to be nurtured, not just the one time for the fabulous forum, but throughout the year. And so I'm excited not only for these WLF Lives, but also for the upcoming Founders Tea and Business Bootcamp, which will be on July 10th from 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you have not yet registered for that, we invite you to do that. Their seats are limited. It will be fabulous, as are all of the WLF events. And so with that, you can see the information today on the screen below you. Register today at forwardwlf.org. And so this is a perfect time actually to introduce Valerie Jackson. And you can see her. She is absolutely fantastic. Let me tell you something about Valerie. Valerie is a dynamic, relatable, and inspired leader. She is genuinely engaging and known for her engaging style and thought-provoking conversation. I, for one, have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours talking to Valerie in thought-provoking conversation, both around business and life, because Valerie forces you to dig deeper and think higher. Some say it's her NASA training or the years as an aerospace engineer that give her the ability to set women on a trajectory to achieve greater than they ever realized they could. In addition to those credentials, Valerie was also a top producing realtor for over 25 years and a sought after advisor and strategic thinking partner who knows firsthand the frustrations and the challenges of running a business and the overwhelm that entrepreneurs face. So as we are talking on this Workforce Wednesday about not just career advancement, but also the leadership skills and the business skills and the productivity that we all face, whether we are an executive, a mid-level manager, or an entrepreneur, I am so excited to have Valerie Jackson joining us to talk about personality and how it affects implementation. So with that, let me welcome my friend, Valerie Jackson. Valerie?
Thank you, Erica. I'm so excited to be here. It's always a great conversation when we get together. So you know how I do. Let's jump in.
Let's jump in. So I'm excited to first, I mentioned personality. And if you were drawn to this or you read the caption, we're talking about how personality affects implementation, affects productivity, affects being able to get it done. So let's start off with a little overview of what that really means in context of careers and business. What does personality allude to when we're talking about that, Valerie?
So in my world, personality speaks to preference. It's a type. Everyone has a type. I am a Myers-Briggs certified practitioner, so a lot of the work I do is based in that methodology. Mm-hmm. And what the belief is that we are born with innate preferences and we operate in them. The challenge comes because we don't understand what those preferences are. A lot of times we're told what our preferences are, we're told how to act, we're told how to do. And unless someone actually does the work of investigating who they are on that level, you're trying to do everything with the wrong set of tools.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get into that work? You mentioned specifically Myers-Briggs. How did you get into personality work?
So if I could tell you even more about my personality, it would explain this story. I was embarking on a new part of my journey into being a coach. Mm-hmm. And I knew I needed an assessment because I knew that people were different. And in some way, I just couldn't articulate what the differences were. So I took or invested in, really, because it was an investment of resources, time and money, the Myers-Briggs certification. Now, when I showed up, my attitude was, there's probably nothing to this stuff. And if you knew what I paid to be there, you'd think that was a crazy assessment. But I thought, there's probably nothing to it. It was a 5-day training. In that week, 2-degree and 10-degree weather that I had to go to. So the first day, I started out, I thought, not much to it. By the first break, which was like at 10 o'clock, I thought, could be something to this stuff. But I didn't want to admit it to anybody. By lunchtime, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. This makes a lot of sense. I investigated it too because I wanted to enhance my relationship with my son. I share it with a lot of people. He's one of the most important people in my life. And we sometimes didn't get each other. So I thought there's got to be something to this. There's these differences. There's a reason for them. So it helped me understand myself first, and then him even better. So that's how that all got going. Now it has been like the layer of an onion since. I've just kept peeling away and pulling away. And there's always more to learn, another assessment, something else to investigate. And here's the funny thing is I've probably taken every assessment out there. I mean, like everyone. I'm still the same person in everyone. So there you go.
So a couple things that you've already mentioned, and I want to call out for those that are listening today. One is the self-awareness piece. And so an assessment, you just said you're still the same Valerie, regardless to what you take, but it's important that you know what your personality is, what your preferences are, and that you be familiar with your own preferences, your own style, so that you can connect with others, be it your coworkers, your customers, or your children, as you mentioned. And I also thought that that was interesting because as we're talking about, this is Workforce Wednesday, but as women especially, we have so many hats that we wear, and so many women wear the hat of a mother, which means you are constantly engaged with personalities at work, at home, and needing to get things done throughout the day, regardless to what environment you're in. So that's an interesting point that you got it so that you could better connect with your son. I would encourage the women listening to think about looking at their assessments, if they've had one before or even taking one, through the lens of how can I apply this in my personal life in addition to business and career. That's interesting. So Valerie, I want to learn more. We teased everyone with, understanding your personality to get more done, to make certain that you're following through, to be more productive. And I want to see if you can give me an example. So I like DISC, but I'm going to go back to Myers-Briggs. And I am an INTJ.
I know.
I don't know that I've ever told you my type, but because
you didn't have to.
Valerie can assess me from just that first conversation, probably. So as an INTJ, what are some barriers that I might be confronted with that would stand in the way of my productivity or in the way of me, achieving the goals that I've set?
Okay. So, and you know, we've had this conversation many a times, and you're right. You've never told me your type, but I knew what it was. So I'm going to start with what the letters mean, if I can just take a couple quick minutes to take that. So the I is a preference for introversion, which means that typically you get your energy from within, and you go internally to draw those sources. The N speaks to your trust.
Valerie.
Yes.
Valerie, if I can, I'm an I. So you said that was a preference toward introversion. What's the other side of that?
The other one is extroversion.
Okay.
Guess who that is, right? So yes, the other one's a preference for extroversion. And so that person needs their energy from outside sources. I want to be clear here. It doesn't mean that you having a preference for introversion that you don't enjoy being around people. And it doesn't mean that I, having a preference for extroversion, never want to be alone. It just means the preference is that when we need an energy, that's where we go. Mm-hmm. I explain it as a balloon. And for a person who has a preference for introversion, when they get up in the morning and they start their day, their balloon is full and they're ready to go. Then as the day goes on, with every interaction, with every meeting, with every time they have to talk to somebody, that balloon deflates. Pretty soon you're out of air. So it's where do you have to go to get more air? Whereas for me, my balloon starts empty. And then I get to talk to Erica. And then I talk to somebody else. And then we have another meeting. And then I'm full. So at the end of the day, I'm ready for happy hour because it's like, yes, this is the best time. The N is a preference for intuition, which means you trust your gut. Mm-hmm. You look at possibilities. Mm-hmm. You are always looking at what could be rather than what has been, mm-hmm. as opposed to a preference for S, which is sensing. And that means you're looking at the data. Mm-hmm. So you may not you may not be as flexible because you know what has always been. That's what works. If it's not broke, why fix it? Mm-hmm. The other letter in your INTJ is the T, which stands for thinking, a preference for thinking, which means you have a tendency to apply the rules evenly, mm-hmm. as opposed to someone who has an F in their profile, which means that they have a preference for feeling. And they're going to look at the rules as they can be applied to each person. It depends. What if this person needs something else? They're not going to apply the rules necessarily evenly. Then there's that interesting J. And that's where you and I have so much fun. So the J is a preference for judging. It doesn't mean judgmental. It means you like things orderly. You want them scheduled. You want them ahead of time. You need to know what's happening. You plan your year a year ahead. I am an ENTP. So the P means a preference for perceiving. I may decide I'm going on a trip the day before I go and be good with that. I like flexibility. So to answer your question now with that little bit of a reference, what the challenges could be for an INTJ is that as you're trying to get things done, if what you have planned to do changes because someone else has changed it, it's more difficult to shift. Mm-hmm. It takes more time to change that. Whereas with someone who has a P, a preference for perceiving, they're just ready to go, mm-hmm. but they can also appear to be ungrounded.
So that's interesting. And I want to unpeel that as it relates to productivity and getting things done. Just the example you just gave, right? So the J versus the P. I like things and you called me out. And I'm proud of it. I am a proud J. I'm actually on the level like a 30 TJ. I'm all the way TJ. And that's me. That and that has been consistent regardless of however many times I've taken Myers-Briggs. It's TJ doesn't shift at all with the environment, with the scenarios I have in my mind. I am TJ. Absolutely. But what that also means, you're right. I like to plan. I just ordered a new 18-month calendar that goes from July 2021 through December 2022. And I'm already locking down dates for the E-Suite Symposium, for our academy, for all of these different things, for the Forward Women's Leadership Forum, absolutely on my calendar. In fact, I just got a call about a family trip and I had to say, I already have dates blocked. So, we got to work around that because there are commitments. And so what you mentioned is from that J perspective, that kind of locks me in and I'm very rigid with that. And the challenge might be then if something comes up and you have to change, or I don't know, COVID hits and everything changes, how do you respond to that? Whereas the P, on the other hand, might have a different challenge and a way to work around that. They haven't planned far enough. So they might not be able to get sponsorship or funding or attendance because they haven't necessarily, worked backward on what do I need to do 30 days out, 60 days out, 90 days out. So recognizing, and just this example, recognizing your style can help you. Recognizing that and recognizing kind of what that preference might lead you to will help you identify the responses that you can take intentionally so that you can get ahead. In my case, it might be that I need to fall back and say, hey, Erica, we just started Q3. Why don't you focus, even though you have a high, longer term vision, focus on what needs to be done in the next 3 months. And for Valerie, who is a strong P, that might be, let me go ahead and put some things on the calendar further out so that I'm forced to think. Or it could be, let me partner with somebody who is a complement to my style so that we have everything covered. These are ways for you to take what you know. And it goes back to that self-awareness that if you've tuned into any of these Workforce Wednesdays on the first Wednesday of the month, you've heard me say in every single time, mindset and self-awareness is key to growth and advancement and fulfillment. And this is what we're talking about now. Knowing yourself, knowing your preference is part of that. So with that, I'm going to let you share a few other tidbits that the different styles may benefit from.
Well, so here is the thing to remember, that when we're working on our preferences, that's where we're comfortable, which means conversely, when we're working out of them, there's a stress that happens. And when you get to that point where you have angst every time the phone rings or you get an email or something dings on social media because it's requiring something of you, you need to know that you can address that situation with the best of who you are and the best you have to give. If you've not done the work to find out who you are on that at the core, then you don't know how to develop to be able to address those situations. So going back to that P and J, because that's the one that's so easy to understand. Mm-hmm. Like you said, I had to learn to schedule things further out. I get speaking engagements. I have to put those on the calendar. But because I know scheduling out too far gives me a little bit of angst, I play this little game with me, and I think I shared it with you. When I put them on my calendar, I put them in erasable format. So it's okay. It's there, but I use a wet erase marker on my big calendar, and I can just wipe it out. And if it doesn't work, or if I'm writing it down, I use pencil. I don't use pen. It's there, and I'm committed to it. I'm going to show up. But if something changes, it's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with the change. And then in my personal life, I don't overschedule. If I'm going on a trip, like I said, I may know at the last minute, or if I have planned it a bit ahead, I don't want a heavy itinerary to that trip. So, and as a person has a preference for Jay, they may want to know everything they're doing on the trip. I know you just did an amazing trip that was so well planned out. I would have happened to find some of those places maybe, but I wouldn't have had access like you did because you did the pre-work. Mm-hmm. So again, it's that partnering, it's understanding, but it's in development. It's understanding what you want the end result to be. Mm-hmm. And when we're trying to get things done, now that's where stress comes in because we have these never-ending lists, right? We're high achievers. There's a lot required and asked of us. And for those of us who don't know how to say no, there's even more required and asked. So what you have to realize is that if you know what your work style is and you know what your preferences are, you're able to maybe you need to do things in small spurts or time blocks. I love using time blocks. Mm-hmm. Those are flexible. I'm committed to doing whatever the activity is for 2 hours of the day, but I can move that block within the day, give me some flexibility so things still get done. If I didn't have that knowledge, I needed that flexibility, I'd hold myself to the hard and fast like my old Franklin planner that was a great tool, but it didn't have enough flexibility for me. I didn't know how to do that. That's why it's so important to know who you are.
Excellent. So I'm going to do a round robin just because I saw somebody, they said great tips, schedules make me feel trapped. I'm buying pencils. That erasable, no commitment is lovely, right? And someone else said that they can find themselves in IENTP, all of them. So I want to do a quick round robin, and whatever comes to your mind based on your experience and your work with business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives. Quick tip for each. I'm going to throw out E and extroverts. Think about something that challenges extroverts and a way that they can potentially address it.
Yes. So the way the Myers-Briggs works and the way personality works, they don't necessarily stand alone, but because the other letters definitely have a factor on personality type. But in general, a person who has a preference for extroversion is a global thinker. You see everything at once. So maybe missing some detail might be a challenge for you. So try to hone in where you need to and look at detail.
So maybe assign or delegate some task to your assistant or to your support team to ensure that they're providing the details so that you have both the big picture and the details there.
That's
excellent. I.
So I would be conversely the thing. You can get so focused on the task ahead that you don't get the energy from the other people and you don't understand what else is going on. So it's kind of like not having boots on the ground. You know, you don't understand what's happening just outside of you. I like to use it as the analogy of driving a car. If you're driving a car and only looking ahead, stuff can come at you from the sides. You got to be looking in your rearview mirror and, you know, just understanding driving more than just above the hood of your car. So people with preferences for introversion can tend to just drive above the hood of the car.
So pro tip, force yourself to schedule weekly or bi-weekly team meetings, group meetings, so that you are ensuring you're getting perspectives outside of your own on occasion. Take yourself out of your comfort zone if that's the case, but do it on a frequency that you can adjust to and accept. All right. S.
Okay. S. That's a preference for sensing, which means you trust the data. A person who has a preference for sensing may not give themselves the opportunity to look at new opportunities. It's what's always been has always been. And so they tend to not be the visionaries in the group. That can be a challenge.
And sometimes that goes with confidence in one's own thinking or confidence in one's own judgment, right? So I can always rely on the data because the data doesn't lie, but I don't necessarily have that same faith in myself. Get a coach, join a group, become part of the Forward Women's Leadership Forum movement and village so that you can be surrounded by people who will uplift your confidence.
Yes.
S. N.
N. Yes. So preference for intuition is we, and I'm just going to own it. We sometimes make the same mistakes over and over because we don't trust the data. What did we learn last time? We're not always looking at that. It feels good. It feels right. We're going. So you have to scale back and look at what do we know and use that as a way to move forward.
Again, include somebody on your team who does look at the data and who does bring the data. I'm actually right there on the cusp of both of those. I am a data girl who also trusts my gut more than I trust any other source out there, period. But if that's not you, go ahead and pull somebody on your team that's going to bring in the data because it matters. All right. Yes. Where are we? I-S-T.
T. Okay. So preference for thinking means that you apply the rules evenly, which means that you may not take into account how things affect other people. The rule is the rule is. We're laying off everybody who has worked here 3 years or fewer, and maybe that's not the best way to do it.
And I'm a 30T, so I can't tell you how to fix that. Any suggestions there, Valerie?
Well, the dichotomy to that is the preference for feeling. So the preference for feeling, the person is looking at, they're more emotion based. And so they're looking at, oh, how does this affect this other person? So they may not apply the rules fairly. The person who has a preference for thinking can appear rigid, and the one who has a preference for feeling can appear too soft and maybe wishy-washy. And can put themselves in a position of giving preferential treatment.
And so the key there then is balance with all of them and recognizing who you are and then making a commitment to attempt to, if you're a T, to attempt to intentionally think about others, how it impacts others, other perspectives before you make decisions. And even when you are communicating, then communicate in a way that takes into account other people's feelings. And on the feeling side, also look at what the rules are and know that rules are there for a reason, and that although you are delivering with compassion potentially, or communicating with compassion, or considering compassion as you're even making rules, incorporate that into the rulemaking, policy making, but then know that there has to be at some point a policy rules that everyone can follow and be on the same page. And then last, we are at J. Or P.
J and P. So for our preference for judging, the people who like the rigid schedule, the people who like to know what's coming, just give yourself some space, because that's a challenge. When you can't shift, then you're going to miss opportunities. You will not be able to address certain things that come your way. So you have to be able to see things a little differently, or at least be able to accept that things change. And then with our preference for perceiving, put some structure in, and maybe not too much, but some. Because what happens if you have no structure, these are the people that tend to tell 4 people that they can be at the same place at the same time, because that's where their heart is. That's what they mean. That's what they want to do. But if you're doing that, you can also tend to be seen as unreliable. So Putting some structure in makes all the difference in the world.
Excellent. And I think I can clearly see how this can pertain to the corporate environment, nonprofit, 9-to-5ers, executives that are listening, entrepreneurs, as well as in the home, and really just thinking, did I overcommit because I wanted to please spouse, or please significant other, or please parent, or please child, and really saying, how do I take care of me, and make certain that all of the needs that are priorities are attended to before I go and extend. So I'm very helpful. Hope that this is very helpful for all of you listening. We have one additional question. For those of us who have teams, how does the assessment help?
The assessment is paramount to helping your team, because when you understand yourself, you understand what the value is that the other team members bring in. So understanding that you do have to have someone that looks at data. You do have to have someone that looks at how the rules are applied. You need a global thinker. But what it does is it gives you a common language to be able to express what your values are and what values you bring to the team. And then it allows the team to be able to understand and accept them, and understand how to use those values in the best way that benefits everybody.
Excellent. So Valerie, when we started this conversation, I had my mind focused on, as an entrepreneur, how do I use my personality type to move forward? And then I'm also thinking, the women I coach, how do I use their personality types to help them in the executive ranks to move forward? And I think one of the other things is, how do we use this information, not only the self-awareness for our own results-oriented path, but then also to engage others. And I think that this discussion has been helpful in recognizing that we all have preferences, recognizing how those preferences might interact with one another through this discussion. Do you have any other tips or anything else you'd like to share as we close out this discussion today?
Well, what I want everybody to remember is that we all have parts of all of these attributes in us. It's just where we prefer. So I think of it as a house with 16 rooms, because there's 16 types in the Myers-Briggs. You could be in any room. You could hang out in any room. but one of those rooms has all your stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's where you live. It's where you're comfortable. It's where you retreat to. So understanding that, you are going to have some parts, and everything and anything can be developed over time.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And we have another comment, very helpful information. Perspectives can add value to one's life. Thank you for participating. Thank you for engaging. Valerie, thank you so much for this walk down the Myers-Briggs lane and personality preferences, and really helping us to think, as we said in your bio, helping us to think and dig deeper into who we are, how we show up, and how we can improve ourselves and our approach so that we continue to move forward. How might anyone that's listening, we talked about Myers-Briggs, but any assessment, how might they go about either finding out more, taking the assessment, finding out more about what their assessment results mean, what those preferences mean for them, or contacting you?
So I am best reached probably on LinkedIn, which I can definitely put my information in the chat. That's because my preference, I understand that all the other is noise for me. Mm-hmm. So I know that I easily get distracted. I found one platform where people can engage with me, and I will engage back. Getting an assessment, taking the assessment is one part. It's the feedback and the understanding of the assessment that's so important. So make sure that if you do an assessment, people do them online, hire someone to do the feedback for you, because it offers a level of understanding that you won't get from just reading the report yourself. There's so many levels to this. And I do offer feedback assessments. So again, reach out to me. I can give you information on that. Would love to work with any of you who really want to know yourself on a level that you've probably not known before.
Excellent. And we will ensure that we put your information in the chat, the comments on both YouTube and Facebook. So forwardwlf.org is the website. If you look at Forward WLF, you can find the Facebook page. Go ahead, subscribe. You can catch us for WLF Live every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. on either Facebook Live or YouTube. Thank you, Valerie, for joining us. I will tell you a little secret. We talked a lot about preferences in general today, but we're going to talk about that and other tips for entrepreneurs this Saturday, July 10th from 12 to 5 p.m. We invite you to claim one of the limited seats that are remaining for the virtual Founders Tea and Business Bootcamp. I can tell you it will be amazing. Our founder, Forward Women's Leadership founder, Colette Coakley, will join the founder of Couples Tea and spill some tea, sip some tea, have some dialogue that is the WLF standard of dialogue and conversation and chat that we have all grown accustomed to, followed by an intensive business boot camp with yours truly and Jamise Pinckney of High Quest Consulting Solutions, as we walk through the stages of entrepreneurship and talk a little bit more about challenges at each stage, tips to overcome those challenges so that you continue to move forward. So if you have not yet registered, there are a few seats remaining, and we are capping registration. So go ahead and claim your seat today at forwardwlf.org. I want to thank you, Valerie, for joining us. I want to thank all of you who have listened. I hope to see you on Saturday, and I hope to individually and personally see you on the next Workforce Wednesday here at WLF Live. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.